another episode of Science into Another World News. So I have some juicy UAP news for you guys. But before I get started and we get into the juicy UAP news, I want to thank you for being here and tuning into my channel, and thank you to all the new subscribers that subscribe to my channel. So let's get started and say hi to this guy in the back too. Anyway, let's get started. So a couple of days ago, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, I follow Retrieval and everything. And he got some news about Christopher Mellon. For those of you who don't know who Christopher Mellon is, he's former Deputy Director Assistant to what I think was the Clinton and Bush administration. So he was like up there. But anyway, Christopher Mellon has his own website. And I guess he had tweeted out on X about a conversation he had with a high-ranking officer. I don't have X anymore. I used to have it when it was Twitter, but I'm not on X. So anyway, Richard passes along this information along to the people who are part of his membership, which I am. And so I'm going to drop a link below in the comments so you guys can read the email thread or the exchange that Christopher Mellon had with this high-ranking officer. And I mean, it's really, really, really good email thread. Some of it is kind of blacked out, but I guess it's a declassified conversation or email or whatever. The talk was declassified. This information was declassified. So let me just get into it. And I'm reading it from Christopher Mellon's Substack. So it says, Blank and I are making huge progress getting into the CR program, which I'm assuming CR means Crash Retrieval program. He plans to meet with you at some point. And this happened in 2020. And then it goes on, the blank would be slack-jawed if they found out what we know now. Then it goes down to senior USG official. And then it has another blacked out paper right above it. It has Christopher Mellon. I'm assuming this is supposed to be Christopher Mellon's name where it's blacked out. Right now, we haven't gone that far back. We're dealing with the recovered UAP that landed in Kingman, Arizona in the 50s. We are vacuuming information up as then it's blacked out, gets read in. We know the management structure and security control system and ownership of this CR. We also know who recovers landed or crashed UAPs under what authorities. We also know that a still highly classified memo by a Secretary of the United States Air Force in the 1950s is still in effect to maintain the cover-up on UAPs. Then it goes down here and it has some name that's been redacted or whatever. Let's see, then it goes down. As you can see, this senior government, and I think this is Christopher Mellon talking, as you can see, this senior government official claimed they were being granted access to an alleged U.S. alien and technology recovery and exploitation program. I won't comment on the organization they work for, but I can confirm the individual had plausible access and was high-ranking, considerably more so than whistleblower David Rush. As you can see, this individual claimed to be gaining deep insights into the program and even provided the name of the alleged Air Force gatekeeper for this alleged secret realm. I've shared an unredacted copy of this message with some staff members of the various congressional oversight committees. To the best of my knowledge, none have elected to contact the alleged United States Air Force gatekeeper to check the veracity of this claim. That's pretty disappointing. Aware of the government's categorical denials of anything related to extraterrestrial life, I submitted a copy of this brief exchange to the Defense Official Pre-Publication Security Review, DOPSR. DOPSR confirmed that the text is unclassified and approved it for public release. However, I also recognize that those making the determination that the document is unclassified would not likely be clear for such an accurately sensitive program if it did exist. Further, the government could hardly deny approval to release this information without, to some degree, confirming its sensitivity and legitimacy. So although I'm relieved to have confirmation that the document is unclassified, I also recognize the truth could be more complicated. Let me see. I think most people receiving information of this kind from a senior government official would naturally take the issue seriously while still holding reservations about such a wild and sensational claim. And yeah, that's what Christopher Mellon had this conversation with this high-ranking officer who claims to work on this crash retrieval program. Now, if you guys never heard of the Kingman, Arizona crash retrieval, and it's actually not a crash. The craft didn't crash. It was a forced landing, and it happened in May the 18th of 1953. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about this. I've talked about this before on my channel, but I'm going to, rehash it since this is what Christopher Mellon was talking about. So it's May 18th, 1953. This object crash lands maybe like 10 miles. I think it's 10 miles. Well, not crash lands again. Let me go back. 10 miles southeast of Kingman, Arizona. And like I said, the object didn't crash. It forced land. It was a forced landing. So what happened was that the Air Force was testing a new experimental radar to try to detect this Russian aircraft. And I'm going to show you. It's a Russian T-2-95, and I have a picture of it. So the United States Air Force, I'm sorry about the glare, if you could see this. The United States Air Force was trying to use experimental radar to detect this Russian aircraft. And so they set up this triangular radar range. There was one in Kingman, one in Red Lake, and one which was north of Kingman, and then 8 miles east of Kingman. So this radar system made like a triangle. And I kind of wrote it, did it right here, if you can see, kind of like a triangle right there. And this would be the craft coming into the triangle. So what they were doing, they set up this triangle. And instead of the Russian craft coming in, this UAP flew into this experimental radar range, and it disabled the craft and brought it down. So the craft ended up having to force land at, I think, a 20 to 30 degree angle. And it was a 20, where is it? My notes. Yeah, the object came down at about a 30 angle degree, and buried itself in 20 inches into the soil. But it came down perfectly intact. This thing was not damaged whatsoever. It was just perfectly intact. Nothing was wrong with it. So the Air Force tracks this thing. They get on site, and inside this craft, these 4 beings are there. These beings are still alive. I'm not going to get into details about how tall these beings were. I think they were a little bit taller than me. I think they were like 5 or 6 feet, but I could be wrong. He doesn't go on to talk about the description of being. But okay, so the Air Force gets there to this site. This craft is occupied with these 4 beings. These 4 beings come out the craft. The Air Force takes them. And I think one of the occupants of the craft told some Air Force captain or general or whatever, "We'll go with you as long as you don't separate us." So anyway, they end up taking these beings. We don't know what happens to them. For all we know, they could still be alive today. I don't know. I'm very curious to know what happened to them, but there's no mention of what actually happened to these beings. So, and then it goes on to talk about, let's see. So, okay, so after the beings were taken, the Air Force got 40 scientists and engineers together. There were 25 scientists and 15 specialists. They boarded a General Motors bus, which was model 3301 with blacked out windows. It took about a 4-hour bus trip because they loaded these scientists up in Phoenix, Arizona. And then they headed out to the site, which took about 4 hours to get to the site. So when they got to the site, the Air Force, you know how the Air Force, they're really strict. It was all about strict and control, and they wouldn't let all these scientists get off at the bus at the same time. Each one had to get off one by one, and I think they was spent maybe 30 minutes off the bus. But what's weird is when these scientists and engineers each went inside the craft, they could only spend about 30 minutes or so. They even could spend 30 minutes. It was less time. They could only spend like a few minutes inside the craft, because when they got inside the craft, they got sick or lightheaded. So something inside the craft wasn't suited for human physiology, and it was making these scientists sick. So they could only spend a little bit of time inside this craft studying it. And so, and then once they were done studying it, these engineers and scientists got back on the bus, and then they were, they pretty sure they were intimidated about not speaking about what they saw and blah, blah, blah. You know how the story goes. So these scientists got back on the bus. They were taken back to wherever they were and dropped back off. So then the Air Force had this task of how to get this craft out of this desert. So they brought in an M25 tank transport was to the site to carry the disc out. And so once they got it loaded up on this M25 transport, they drove it down to the Colorado River by the Hoover Dam, and there was a barge waiting. So they managed to get this thing off they drove the M25 truck onto the barge, and then they were because they planned to float it down the Colorado River until they got to a certain point and across the other side, because I believe this thing was going to, I want to say White Sands or Area 51. I can't remember the location they were trying to take this thing to. But anyway, once they got this craft loaded onto this barge, somehow these cables broke, because they were throwing cables across from the other side of the river to get it over to the barge, the way I'm understanding. Anyway, some of these cables snapped. The barge went floating down the Colorado River in Hoover Dam. It slammed into the side of the Hoover Dam. And this is all according to the lead investigator, who was Harry Drew. Harry Drew is no longer alive, but he was the lead investigator on this case. And Michael Schratt followed up on this. And if you guys who don't know who Michael Schratt is, he's a really good UFO researcher. And he also studies like history of like airplanes and aeronautics and all that kind of stuff. But he also is really good at crash retrieval information. So if you guys want to know about crash retrievals and forced landings and all that kind of stuff, Michael Schratt is really, really, really good. He has a YouTube channel too, so I'll put a link in the description below so you could check him out. I also have his book called Dark Files, and it has a bunch of cool illustrations in here that he does with Tom Bogan. So of witnesses who've encountered objects and stuff like that. So I highly suggest you guys get this book. You can get it on Amazon. But anyway, back to the story. So they get this thing loaded on. This thing crashes into the side of the Hoover Dam, and Michael Schratt was talking about at one point the water level was low by Hoover Dam, and he said there might be some evidence to show this thing collided into a wall if the water level is real low. If somebody actually want to go down there and look and check it out, I don't know. But anyway, that's the story. This is what Christopher Mellon was talking about with this high-ranking officer, the 1953 Kingman, Arizona crash. So yeah, I thought I would share a little bit about that with you. My thing is, what happened to these 4 beings that were in this object? Did they take them away and keep them locked away forever? Did they experiment on them? Which I hope they did not. Did these beings able to make contact with their homeworld and someone come looking for them? There's no talk about what happened to these 4 humanoids after they were taken by the Air Force. Probably nothing good, I can imagine, but I'm really curious. So yeah, that is the juicy gossip. Can you guys believe that? Let me see if there's anything else on here that Christopher Mellon talked about. Like I said, I'll drop a link in the comments below. So no, that's it. It's just on his Substack. So I really, really want to share that. That was fascinating to know that he was able to speak with somebody who was in one of these programs or whatever. I'm not sure though if the guy he was speaking to worked directly on the program or he just knew. I don't think the guy who he was speaking to actually seen the object. He just knew about the program and that it existed, and there were people working on the program the way I understood it. So yeah, so guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I was just floored when I read this, when Richard Dolan passed this along to us. So we shall see where this goes. Who knows? People, I don't. You know what? I don't have much hope that disclosure is going to happen from our government. It's just not. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I would like to keep an open mind that it is going to happen, but I'm not hopeful it is going to happen. But who knows? With information like this coming out, something might just break, and maybe a flood of information might come out. But I'll be iffy about what the Pentagon or Department of Defense says to us. So anyway. Yeah, I think that's... Oh, let me show you a picture of the object. It's not the actual object. It's an illustration that Michael Schratt did. Hopefully you can see it. I'm just going to show it from my computer. So, that glare on my camera. Let me see if I can adjust this lighting. I don't know if that's going to be bad. You won't be able to see it at all. So that's the object right there. And it has these little grooves around the middle that goes around this band, this outer band. And then there's like a little hatchway, like almost, I think, underneath the craft. And I believe it was open when the military got there. And I believe the 4 beings were already standing outside the craft once it had been disabled by the radar system. So yeah, but this thing came down perfectly intact. It perfectly in working condition. I mean, I guess they couldn't fly back out because they had to load onto that transport. And I'm pretty sure the beings weren't going to help our government. They probably just flew it. But what happened to their craft? They flew into this radar and it just disabled their craft. So yeah, there you have it. So interesting news. So I just wanted to share that. Well, I think my glasses are crooked. So I just wanted to share their information with you guys. Like I said, let me know what you think in the comments below. I would really appreciate it. That's it. That's all I got for now. I'm out. Bye.